everybody. Two Men in a Bible here. This is Jeff. I'm Jeff, and Joel's not here. If you've seen our show before, you probably know that sitting with me is not Joel. However, I'm very happy to be interviewing Jim Bartlett today. Jim is running for State Superintendent of Education in North Dakota here. And I've known Jim quite a while. Our kids knew each other. The boys wrestled a little bit together. And there's really a conservative, with a lot of Christians involved, kind of movement happening in North Dakota, which is really exciting. This year, there's been a record number of challengers to incumbents and in the legislature. But outside the legislature, there's some excitement too. And probably one of the highlights, I think, that I was blessed to be a part of was at the Republican convention. Jim had already announced that he was running, and at the convention, both Jim Bartlett and Kirsten Baszler, who is the incumbent DPI superintendent, were there seeking the endorsement of the Republican Party of North Dakota. And a few of us, believe it or not, the night before, were talking about this and some other candidates. And I said, I think Jim's going to have an uphill climb. Anybody would to knock over Kirsten Baszler. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes. I really thought it was going to be close. The next day, Jim gave what I would consider a great speech. If you want to listen to his whole speech, go to the Republican North Dakota site and catch it. But anyway, Jim got the endorsement, and not only did he win, but he won like 967 to, I think, 426 or something like that. Just completely. Lots of applause through. And so I applaud you, Jim, for that speech and for the endorsement. What excites me the most is your Christian worldview and the Ten Commandments. But let me just start with what excites you about what got you excited and actually wanting to step into the fray, so to speak.
Yes, I have been involved in the study of worldviews for a long time. When I first became a Christian in 1983, I was living with pastors at Purdue University who were traveling to North Dakota to fight the Department of Public Instruction over the compulsory school law that was affecting homeschoolers and Christian schoolers at that time in the 80s. And so since that time, I began really appreciating how the Bible applies to all of life and studying how it does apply. And then over the years, I also, while teaching at NDSU, we ran a Christian faculty and staff ministry and then another ministry for young married couples. But after a while, I started wondering, am I, as a Christian active on the secular university campus, actually still helping the secular and other agendas along? And so I spent 3 years writing a paper called Secularization by the Christian Educator. And that was like walking the plank. It was true. Yes, I really was supporting secular humanism, Marxism, postmodernism without really wanting to support any of those. And so that was why I left NDSU in 2004. We didn't want to attract people to me and to the NDSU to continue those philosophies. And so after that, we moved to the farm, started the farm, but also helped direct the North Dakota Homeschool Association for a few years, 6 years. And then we've been doing studies and Sunday schools on these topics all the time, just because I like to study the philosophies. It's really interesting because it helps you understand the times, like the sons of Issachar, and then you can know what to do about them if you know what is going on. And so then when someone, maybe you, mentioned that somebody needs to challenge the current superintendent, and I had already been thinking I should, try to run again for something, whether it was a district position on the Senate or House. But then when that idea came up, it's like, whoa, that would be too much fun. Because I already knew all the problems and I knew the solutions, and I've been both inside the system and outside the system. So yeah, it's way too easy, but it is fun. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So you've been a professor at NDSU in North Dakota. You raised your family in Botno and became a homeschool director of North Dakota, besides being a homeschool dad and self-studying a lot of these things. So you have have the credentials, which I think is really great to have the thought of somebody who not only has experience in a secular university like NDSU as a professor, but also homeschooling is a growing trend all over, but especially in North Dakota. And for you having been the director and having that experience, I've said since you've ran against this to many people, I've said, if you want to challenge Jim Bartlett in arguing about worldviews or a Christian worldview, you better be studied up. So, I just got to give you a little bit of a plug there. But if you could dive into that a little bit, Jim, help us understand, what do you mean by a worldview, Christian worldview? People probably aren't aware of what do you mean by secular humanism, postmodernism?
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. A worldview is like a religion, sometimes called the practical aspects of religion. It is the way you see the world. So you can think of it as, what color glasses do you have on? And those views can be basically into 6 categories. And I'm referencing summit.org. Look up chart and you'll see the details, and you can learn it yourself really pretty quickly. But so there's a Christian view, Islamic view, secularism, Marxism, new spirituality, and postmodernism. So those are different options that are circulating in our world today. And then there's 10 aspects to each one of those, and I can define each one. I'll do that in just a second. So let's, for example, if we look at secular humanism or secularism, what is that? Okay, first of all, we have it everywhere, and it's hard to see, but it is everywhere. It's been with us at least since 1933, John Dewey, the Humanist Manifesto, and coming through the colleges for teachers. But here's one definition of that. An atheistic and materialistic worldview that advocates for a public society free from the influence of religion. And another aspect, the secular worldview says that the physical universe is all there is. Humanity is broken because of ignorance. Redemption comes through science, not religion. So a lot of times the way I explain it is, like a quick version, is secular humanism believes there's no spirit in man and there's no God, so everything has to be formed from the outside, and so therefore your feelings have to be molded and your society has to be arranged so that it forces you into their view of what goodness is. So that would be secular humanism. And so we have it embedded in our whole society so amazingly well. And if we think that the schools are neutral, and there's a concept called the myth of neutrality. So if you believe that what's going on in the public schools today is religiously neutral, that would be called neutrality, and it's actually not. It's actually mostly this secularism that I just mentioned.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think most people would think that. Most people, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah, in fact, I have a quote here somewhere from John Dewey, basically saying that their view was to take humanism through the colleges into the public schools without criticizing Christianity in order to make it a more acceptable public religion. And so that is, they really need an award because they did that so thoroughly.
Since
right?
the 30s, basically.
Yeah. The Humanist Manifesto, I think, was signed, the first one in 1933.
Wow.
And it's a couple of updates from there, but same concepts. So there's the one book it's called The Clergy in the Classroom.
Okay.
And that is secular humanism in the classroom. And it's all the original sources, explains the details, and very helpful.
The religion of secular humanism.
Yeah, the back cover says, education is the most powerful ally of humanism, and every American public school is a school of humanism. What can the theistic Sunday schools, meeting for an hour a week and teaching only a fraction of the children, do to stem the tide of a 5-day program of humanistic teaching?
Wow. So would you say it was not that way say the founding of our country into the 1700s, 1800s? Was it more theistic then?
Yeah, it was Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, they called it public school instead of government school, for one thing. Noah Webster was the founding father of American scholarship and education. He wrote the first dictionary, and he also wrote the Blueback Speller, one of the most popular books in early America, used for 150 years to teach children their ABCs, along with the Ten Commandments and some basic theology. And so America was Christian. It had a Christian school system. I mean, in the sense that they taught Christianity, and it was not considered sectarian.
Well, Bible was a textbook. From what I understand, the first act, one of the first acts of Congress was to give schools Bibles, and the primer, the New England primer, was teaching the overview of Christianity. Was a main thing that they taught little kids: A for Adam, B, C, D, all the way down.
The foundation of Western civilization is the Ten Commandments. It is Christianity.
Oh,
and so,
okay.
so if anything that's fighting against that is against God, against Western civilization.
Okay.
And so even North Dakota, its history in the North Dakota Constitution, acknowledges Almighty God in the preamble, and then it references the need to teach morality and integrity and other things. But that morality, if you look it up in that time frame, Webster's dictionary, morality is the idea where you're able to discern good and evil. So then if you look up the word good and evil in Webster's, it's a list of scripture for good, a list of scripture for evil.
Sure.
There's no excuse. Then in North Dakota, they used to have all the Ten Commandments posted on the wall in every school.
Wow.
And that is, I think it's King James Version, and it's got the new commandment, John 13:34 on the bottom, and it says, designed and drawn by the Department of Agriculture, North Dakota Agricultural College.
Really?
So
those went out in what, the 60s, 70s?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what year, but yeah, it went out.
Wow.
But and so then we wonder, why do we have this long list of problems going on in the school today?
Yeah.
Well, it's easy. God is out, and so evil is in.
Interesting. So explain that, Jim. Let me throw a zinger at you here. People are obviously going to wonder, oh, well, if you got a platform on the Ten Commandments, then if you became superintendent over the state, that means that my child and my child's teacher will be forced to be Christians. Is that?
Of course, Christians would understand no one can force you to be a Christian because it requires God's working on your heart and you receive Christ. So there's not really any force involved. But say if a person was not a Christian, they have to just realize that North Dakota has a history of Christianity built into its constitution as well as all of America. So we need to be, we certainly allow everyone in, unbeliever as well, to the Christian system of North Dakota's constitution, the way it's set up. Just like now, Christians are allowed into the atheist system that we have operating.
Right. Yeah, because there's no neutrality, so it's one or the other. I'm glad you brought that point up.
And then as far as teachers being required to be Christians, that is important to talk about. And the quick answer is they should be, if they're going to teach the truth. If they're committed to something other than the truth, that's a problem. In terms of defining what a Christian is, you wouldn't have to go beyond the North Dakota Constitution and realize that, Ten Commandments, morality, right and wrong, can you discern good and evil? You could go to Exodus 18:21 for civil magistrates. I don't know if you need to go that far, but generally, you got to people have to know the difference between good and evil, legitimate authority and illegitimate authority, which does require a little Bible knowledge.
Interesting.
Because how are you going to teach the kids?
And that was in our Constitution, and it's still in our Constitution.
Yes, absolutely.
Morality and truth. When I was listening to your speech, I didn't realize, I knew a little bit of that, but I didn't realize that it had that much in there.
Yeah. Here's the full quick list. Is the North Dakota Constitution, education requires intelligence, patriotism, integrity, and morality. And it's very nicely put here, for the prosperity and happiness of the people. So isn't that awesome to be able to think, okay, that's why we want some good education, for your prosperity and for your happiness. Blessing of God leads to happiness as well. And then it mentions no sectarian control. So it's not one denomination that runs everything. It's supposed to be paid by the legislature, not by the property taxes. And then practical stuff, practicable, I think the word was, should be used. And so, things that are useful. Truthfulness, purity, public spirit, and respect for every kind of labor. Okay. Like people say the kids are not working as hard as they used to. They don't have the work ethic. In early America, they used to call it the Puritan work ethic, and then the Christian work ethic, then the New England work ethic, and then the North Dakota work ethic, and now there isn't a work ethic. Isn't any work ethic.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of gone downhill, but also for the same reasons. We've lost the definition of morality. And as far as schools go, one of the awesome things that can be brought back so easily, and maybe some people are doing this, but teach the calling how God has called people to different careers and gifts and such, rather than teaching evolution, where they're taught that they're evolved from nothing and therefore you have no purpose in life, and therefore depression, suicide.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, there is a connection, I think, there. If you have, no purpose and you're just a speck that, or a clump that evolves into a human. So I'm a teacher, I'm rhetorically speaking now. So I'm a teacher, and I'm listening to you and saying, hey, I am a Christian, and I don't believe that I buy into secularism, because I pray for the kids when I'm in the classroom. I teach them to be nice to each other. I don't steal from each other. Johnny, quit picking on Susie. Isn't that Christian morality? Am I not?
It's a good beginning point, but it's not thorough.
Okay.
And so how are they being taught to address the transgender movement, or how are they taught to address the diligence in their work ethic, or and are teachers actually speaking up for Christianity, teaching Bible?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I know firsthand as a legislator, I have talked to a number of superintendents over this bill or that, and they're literally required, even by the federal government, to affirm. I guess I call it the rainbow agenda, because there's so many letters and colors in it now that I can't keep up with it. But of course, the latest one being transgender and
yeah, that's a good example of where the idea, it's called the doctrine of lesser magistrate, but it's a simply obeying God rather than man idea. So if people, superintendents included, were able to discern good and evil right in that federal legislation, then they would say no to evil and yes to good, which is the Romans 13 requirement of government anyway. And so, it's a hard thing to say no to money, but then if it's God's blessing, then you can also say maybe there's another way to get the money or get that job done, which actually is easy to point to as well. In Fargo, the gender inclusion document is interesting.
That's from their school.
Yeah, so I've learned more about gender inclusion than I used to know by reading that.
Wow.
But the crazy thing to me is reading that and thinking, okay, so the teachers have to know that in order to teach the students, in order for them to know that, in order for them to decide which is which.
That's 30 pages, Jason.
And what I want to be. And then you hear the stories about the teachers, crazy stories, like teachers leaving because girls are in the men's bathroom harassing the teacher because, they feel like they're going to be a boy and they're just practicing.
Wow.
This is amazing stories. And it goes on. And it's across North Dakota. It's not only in Fargo.
When you talk about lesser magistrates, I'm going in two different directions now when you bring that up. And I know I've appreciated your listening to you talk about your strategy. And I know you have a strategy that really brings parents into the mainframe of the education in North Dakota. Could you explain that a little bit? Yeah,
we've got a long list of the problems, so we'll just skip that for now because everybody can go through everybody's got their own list. I just have a longer one. Maybe.
And if you want to share those, you feel free.
Sure.
A few of them.
Well, maybe a few. Okay, the transgender agenda is secular as in kids, but if you read references like from Hillsdale Imprimis, called Inside the Transgender Empire, it'll point to the fact that the transgender is not only about sexual transition, it's about implementing the future of Marxism in the new socialist man. So it's a political strategy hiding as a sexual strategy, completely evil. Oh, that's just one thing on the list. Okay, I'll go quickly. Parents are not kept informed about what's happening with their children. If you have evolutionary viewpoint, then you don't want the parents to know what's happening with the children because you want to separate them in order to evolve society faster according to the new definitions. Common Core rebrand. K through 5 reading curriculum has diversity, equity, inclusion in it, the Amplify curriculum. And school board members don't have choices on the curriculum. on that one exactly, a testimony on that point. The kids, there's a youth health survey result, depressed, suicidal, a lot of problems. Bullying of the students and the teachers and the school board members, arbitrary enforcement of the bullying policies around the state, the social emotional math by feelings, where the kids getting asked how you feel every day as they come into school, getting kind of paranoid about even that. Lower expectations for the academic standards, less practical skills covered. More money is not improving the education level. It's the communism certainly is not helping patriotism, right? How can you connect
the two?
It's
antithetical to patriotism.
Yeah, there's so many things that are antithetical. It's like crazy. I usually focus on the moral one because then it's just one example. But yeah, the patriotism, we're not teaching patriotism in a real way. We're teaching to reject American history. Besides having historical revision. So moral relativism, you can't teach morals and moral relativism at the same time, right?
Because morals are absolute.
Yeah. Moral relativism would be the idea like what's right for you is right for you. What's right for me is right for me, which is part of that secular humanism definition.
I think that's a big thing in school.
Yeah. So teachers are leaving because kids are undisciplined. They can't discipline the kids. And it's just a crazy place to be in the classroom without discipline of kids. So a long list there. So I'll just skip straight to more of the solution stuff. And the way I look at it, it's like cleaning a garage. A garage has had a lot of stuff in it for a long time, and some big boxes and a bunch of small boxes. So I'm focusing only on the big boxes first, because you think about your garage, it's like you really have to take care of the big stuff first before you can even see the little stuff. So 2 major big things to deal with. The far left organizations that run the North Dakota Public Schools have to be dismissed. And most of their operations. So the DPI, most of their operations, North Dakota Center for Education Leadership, the School Board Association, and the Teachers Union. All of those are far left organizations led by far left leaders and implementing the policies from Department of Education around the country so that we're the same as New York and every other place in the country. It's completely crazy. Can't go on. And so that would include dismissing the curriculum they selected, the library books that they're keeping there that are bad, and the radicalized staff and the teachers that are there too. If you're actually serious about getting the North Dakota Constitution implemented in education, which includes the Christian culture, you have to do that. You can't just keep the communists running the place. And then secondly, that would be part 2 of this one, is update the North Dakota Century Code enough to keep those evil influences out, because they've been, by the previous superintendent and others, have been brought in and kind of codified in a way into the North Dakota Century Code, and that just can't go on. That's illegitimate authority number 1. So second major big box in the garage is actually really returning the power of education to the parents, thoroughly returning control of education to the parents. And what that means, first of all, is that the parents don't control things now. School board are not controlling things now. It's completely controlled by these outside organizations. So to reverse that, it's not that hard. Think about a group of parents sitting in a classroom and without the school board members or the superintendents, teachers, but people that are just the parents mainly. And then on the top of the board, write complete parental control. Left side of the board, write vision, mission, goals. So then they define what they value for that group of students, that school, that segment, whatever group you want to think of. And then after that's defined, then start using lean accounting. It's a simple way of saying, let's look at what values do that group of people want within the limits of the North Dakota Constitution.
Yeah, in a big box sort of way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Even at this point in our counting, it's like, okay, which curriculum do we want to use?
Okay.
And which books do we want to use? Do we really want transgender agenda in there? Well, sorry, that one doesn't qualify under North Dakota Constitution.
Gotcha.
We'll have to drop that one. But do we want more sports and whatever they would want? And then that can be put numbers to those things. And so then anything that is valued by the customer, the parent, can be considered, on the line. Anything that's not considered adding value to the customer's expectation is considered waste. And so there's 8 different types of waste that would be then worked on.
Wow. Yeah. So that really, because the parents would be in the initial decision.
Yeah.
For the school board, really.
So the idea is that parents are said to not be involved right now, but it's actually the reason they're not involved because they are bullied out of being involved.
Yeah.
Like who wants to be involved if you can't get anything done?
Right. It'd be fun to see some examples of that. In fact, Jim, we're about at the end of our hour. If you guys want to, can you stick around a little bit? We'll continue the video or for YouTube, because our Two Men in a Bible has been doing radio for a long time, but for you in the audience, we are just going on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook and different things like that, X, and so find us there, 2 Men in a Bible. We're just starting that, so we're excited about it. So God bless you all. Great to have you on radio, Jim. We'll catch up with you. And for those of you that want to hear more, find us on YouTube.
And BartlettSPI.org.
Oh, yes. Bartlett.
Yes.
SPI. SP as in Paul. I.
Yes. .org.
.org. O-R-G. BartlettSPI.org. God bless. So, Jim, let's take a little bit of a deep dive into that. And then I don't want to forget to ask you about, you talked about those 8 things. Then there was, I understand that you were going to meet with or interview some teachers, and they, because of some pressure that was put on them or some conversation that was, not welcome, they backed out.
What we're noticing actually around the state is that the teachers and sometimes school board members and students are afraid to speak up about the problems that are happening because they fear reprisal in some form. The teachers are literally fearing to lose their jobs, and I've got examples of a few of them that have lost their teacher's credentials and job because they didn't go along with the system's requirement, even though they were doing good things and didn't see anything that they were doing wrong. Even yesterday, we were planning to meet with 6 teachers, and then I heard that there was some out-of-state group that was training teachers to not criticize superintendent, and therefore, and if they did, they would lose their job.
Wow.
And so they all backed out and said, sorry, we can't talk to you, and good luck with your election. so it's like, are we in Germany or which country in history? I was just thinking,
this is North Dakota.
Yeah.
Of all the states, we're among the top shelf for, I think there's a collective memory actually of Christian, at least Christianity, because it's still big, but I think it was so embedded here.
There's one thing you just reminded me of. You probably remembered friend Andre. He was President Reagan's Interstate Commerce Commissioner, lived in North Dakota. His dad was a pastor, a Dutch Reform type. And he told me one time that all the good people left North Dakota in the 1930s.
Right at the manifesto time?
Well, it was because of the Dust Bowl and the farming. And they believed that the 8th commandment meant thou shalt not steal, and you should not take government funding because it would be redistributing wealth as socialism, and we should not live here, so therefore we would have to move to be able to farm in a place that had water. Wow. And so I don't know how many people left or anything, but that was an interesting story. And we certainly have lost the idea that the 8th commandment applies to economics in the state. Yeah. In fact, there's 2 other references on that. There's a book called Red Harvest, Communism in American Agriculture, and North Dakota is mentioned 143 times in that book. Okay. And it says who did what when. It's a very boring book. Another book is called A New Agrarian Mind, and the first chapter is about Liberty Hyde Bailey. He was the Cornell Dean of Agriculture, started the U.S. Extension services around the country, as well as the 4-H programs, as well as homemakers clubs, to create a new rural society to free the countryside from Christianity. Yeah, it's amazing.
Free the countryside.
Yeah, remove Christianity from the countryside.
That was a book.
Yeah, that was just the first chapter in that book. But yes, and it gives some examples of his radical anti-Christian thought. And so we're not immune to that, is what I'm saying. North Dakota is not free from the evil. Stalin was looking at North Dakota quite a bit in terms of how do we control North Dakota.
Well, and you kind of mentioned, to so many people that would say, I don't see that. I don't notice that in my school. And you indicated that even you at one time didn't realize that it's there. So you almost have to be, do you think you almost have to be taught to see it?
Yes.
And then when you do, it's almost like, wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
it's all over.
Exactly. It's very easy once you just see a few things.
Yeah.
Okay, right. In fact, you can feel it, from Christians. If you're in a public school and you just try to act like a Christian, you'll see that there's some problem here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just do what you would want to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when you put that together with the whole, there is no neutrality. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've always maintained that, okay, if you think about the 10 Commandments, which I think is a foundational part of this discussion, is that, whether it be the public school or even our whole state or nation for that matter, you don't necessarily even have to be a Christian to benefit in a society that is based on, because if you think about, just take a few of the 10 Commandments are about us and God, but most of them are about our relationships with each other. Don't kill each other. Don't steal from each other. Don't talk nasty behind somebody's back. Don't even want their stuff. Now I'm thinking, a Muslim or an atheist would do better in a society like that than they would in their own country.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think a Muslim would have that kind of freedom. Just let them live. Let them, the aspect of freedom here is a part of this too.
Yeah, there's a movie called Time Changer.
Yeah.
And that's a good one to think about. If you haven't seen it, it's really a fun little bit of a comedy, very good points. Seminary professors in the 1800s, one of them had a great idea to write a book on how to teach character without Christ. And then another professor invents a time machine to go forward 100 years to see what would happen. And so he takes this seminary professor that wrote this book forward 100 years and sees the chaos. Because if you don't have a moral standard and it's not based on God, the God of Christianity, then you have chaos. And that's what we got today. Boy, we've gone past the 100-year mark in the time machine. But another interesting point in that movie is watching the guy that did write the book come forward 100 years, still acting like a Christian within a non-Christian culture. He's saying, praise the Lord, thanks Lord, and he made it rain today, and just common things that we would probably all say if we weren't a little not used to that, because we've been cowered into a corner.
That's, sorry to interrupt.
No, please do, Jason.
That is the fall of Rome.
Yeah.
That is exactly the fall of Rome, simply because of the moral standards that were tried to be implemented, but they were implemented on the basis of gods that were created in humanistic form, right? Because God stands outside of creation, right? And he's so much bigger than his creation, he's inconceivable, right? And so the only thing that we can conceive is humanistic gods who have the same flaws that we do, albeit with more power, but albeit that means their flaws are even more magnified. And you look at the Roman society fell due to licentiousness in their society. But it was all based because their morality was based on the you guys mentioned it earlier, the morality
Noah Webster's dictionary.
Moral relativism.
That's it. Thank you. It was that sliding scale of, well, what's good for me? This is my truth, and that's your truth, and but there's no firm basis in right and wrong.
Yeah, I think that alone, that moral relativism, once it's defined, I think a lot of people can see that. Parents, teachers, it is that way, and some might even advocate for it in the name of the religion of secular humanism.
Yeah, and so they should take whatever their ideas are forward 100 years and see what it looks like.
The logical outcome, which is very predictable. Well, we have a historical example that Jason just gave.
Totally.
And interesting. Well, Jim, maybe we'll round third heading home, but take your time while you're thinking of anything you want to wrap up with.
Yeah, I guess in wrapping up generally, I do feel like superintendent, if I'm superintendent, one of the major things is going to be simply to teach people about these worldview issues. Because what I'm noticing is that there's a lot of great teachers, great people, and they, like me, just didn't really know these things. Yeah. There are some radical people on the other side that do know these things and are pushing for the bad agendas. And then there's some in between that are sort of torn, don't want to think about it. And so the way I begin to explain it is there's like 3 levels of the worldview studies. And so the first level is just awareness. It's like, oh, there is a worldview. There is a thing called Marxism. Let's see what that is. And so if you begin to learn those things, and so summit.org, look up chart, it would be the quick way to begin learning those things in their books. Second level is the application. It's like, okay, yeah, we've got Marxism in our schools. Okay, the superintendent just required me to implement critical race theory, which is a Marxist idea. And so being able to trace what's actually happening in your day to the worldview thing, then that's level 2. So level 3 is Bible and conviction and understanding of why you need to do something. Because it's not enough just to watch it happen. As a Christian, we're responsible to defy tyrants and to be able to speak truth to power and do what's right, serve God, not man, because that's where the difference becomes. And so everybody can do it, and every child, every parent, everybody can have a role in that, and we must. I mean, that's really what we've lost in Christianity today.
Because I would say that I call it cultural Marxism, or they're not just coming in on us with soft tennis shoes on, wanting to run alongside of Christianity. Yeah. They're militantly, and I know you had did you have an actual textbook example of, well, there's that too. Yeah. That's a
one thing. Yeah. I just point this out from Ken Ham's ministry, but the idea is the Christians have been focused and conservatives on the balloons on the other guy's castle. So this is showing a war between 2 castles, the conservative Christians versus the Marxist humanists. And the Marxists have been shooting at the foundation of the Christians and the conservatives. And so the Word of God, the truth, the 10 Commandments, the laws that we established the country on, history, all these things, they've been shooting really good right at the foundation. That's why it's breaking apart and we're falling apart. Whereas the conservatives and the Christians have been shooting at the balloons, and that's the surface things, whether it's the abortion issue, the gay marriage, or it's the DEI in the classroom, or the budget, or whatever. All of these things are really surface issues compared to what we need to be doing. We need to shoot at their foundation. So that's what I'm doing, is shooting at the foundation of Marxism and postmodernism and humanism.
Well, and I think a lot of those arrows, those shots, those bullets are coming from very powerful unelected bureaucrats that are even beyond the federal government. This is, if you don't believe this, just look back and remember the COVID pandemic. And cultural Marxism reared its ugly head in a very visible way at that point. Look how quickly our freedoms from very powerful, wealthy, unelected groups of people like the WHO, the World Economic Forum, and stuff like that. That's the stuff I think about. And they are most certainly they'd be doing a lot of that too. And I think, so a lot of this gives a person a helpless feeling, like, wow.
Yeah. Churches really are responsible to teach people the truth so that they can be effective. You think about Ephesians 4, the ministries of the church are given to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. So they really should we should be the ones doing the work, but the pastors are the ones that should be equipping us to go do it. And so today, like Sons of Issachar, needed to understand the times. Okay. So that's why, the book called Understanding the Times is one I carry around all the time. And I read it over and over because it's like, this is the answer. I mean, you got to understand the times. There's many other books, and this refers to many of them, but it's not that hard. So the question is, what in your theology is holding you back?
Well, a survey of competing worldviews in the subtitle.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what.
So it is very interesting because it begins to explain what's going on in the real root cause point of view. So it's the roots.
Wait, now those are the characteristics I think we ought to want in a superintendent of education that's overseen in a sense, or whatever you want to call it. The Department of Public Instruction, they ought to be the most involved in studying that kind of stuff, because it's the big picture, right? They're seeing the big picture and the vision and the future of our state. So yeah, folks, this is the guy that I think we want for Department of Public Instruction, and the primary is June 11th, and I keep forgetting to mention that, but that's coming up, gang, and I really, really hope that you'll give Jim a serious look and consideration that turns into a yes vote when it's on the ballot this June 11th. One more thing I'm just very curious about, because you gave us a peek at that little thin actual book from, I'm assuming a grade school, was it, or did that not make it in here?
It was a grade.
Read a couple of things that are actually in.
Yeah, this is one of the Bismarck.
We talk big picture, but here's down at the practical level teaching kids in a book from.
Yeah, from one of the Bismarck schools. Yeah.
Bismarck school.
And I don't know how many schools use it, but it's National Geographic, so you'd think it'd be good, right?
Yeah.
So if you're learning mythology, and you'd be learning that today we may rely on science to explain the world around us instead of telling myths about why it reigns or how the world was created. And that reminds me of talking with transgender people, because they believe that Christianity is a myth. And so this would dovetail just nicely with teaching people that Christianity is a myth, just like all the other myths. And it addresses afterlife, creator, immortal, pantheon, spirit, all of it from a mythology point of view, assuming that Christianity is a myth or missing. Yeah.
That, folks, not in North Dakota. I'm sorry. We don't have to lower ourselves to that. I mean, I remember when my older boys were looking at Minot State, which I would have loved to have them go to Minot State. One of my sons was interviewing or having discussion with professors and the whole orientation. And, that day, as well as many other days, the realization that the science department, of which he would have been a part of, is really run by atheists, run by card-carrying atheists who have atheist meetings, and they attend to that. I don't know if they have it anymore. If they had a free thinkers, there was an atheist club, that
NDSU
professors, I'm sure NDSU, probably all the colleges, that's the thing that people aren't aware of. And maybe for a lot they are, but it doesn't matter, because I just want them to learn the content. Look, folks, that it has to start to matter. We got to take a look at what's happening to our culture right now.
Yes. Yeah. This has been going on for a long time. And at NDSU, I got lots of examples, but it has to stop. And the only way to stop it is to return to the North Dakota Constitution. Remember that it points to a Christian culture and the standards of the Ten Commandments, and those need to be applied. No excuses. Everything else is illegitimate. And we'll get to talking about college another day.
Well, that summed it up really well right there. And let me tell you, and so North Dakota can do better, everybody. Let's get Jim Bartlett for the next DPI, June 11th, the primary. You've been listening to Two Men in a Bible. Have a great day.